Okay, so hello everyone. So good morning, and thank you so much for joining me today on this session where I would like to tell a story about a module that I have designed for the past year and a half and delivered actually last semester. It's a master's level module. It's about software product and project management, and the focus of this talk is about teaching software product judgment. How can we rethink the student experience in this module, and how can we embed certain principles about judgment and critical thinking and decision making in the design of the module. So, without any further ado, I wanted to start with a question to the audience. So, have you ever used a product and asked yourself this question? Who designed this? And why would anyone think that it is useful? Anyone like can maybe share a product, an idea of a tool or something that you have used and like so clunky or something that's it's like why they built this? Anyone? Maybe a little bit of help. Who remember this little fellow here, Clippy. It was the most annoying feature that Microsoft decided to add. Security, but like at the same time, like it's nice for your onboarding on Word. But like when you are like, in the middle of writing something, this is kind of popping all over the place and distracting you. You ask yourself this question: why would anyone think that this is useful for this to keep popping up? It's quite intrusive, redundant, and distracting. So yeah, so you ask yourself who are the people behind making such a decision. So this is maybe like a trivial example, it's just a feature. But looking at bigger examples of such cases, like I don't know if anyone have heard of Quippy, and it is the Netflix of mobile streaming. I wouldn't be surprised if you haven't heard of it because it failed big times. It is the mobile first short form of streaming, and it focused on like delivering content, streaming content on the go, people on the buses and moving around, short episodes of certain series, and they've done, what someone look from, the bigger picture, they've done everything right. They've kind of signed up with Hollywood, big names, directors, and kind of tied things well with the Wall Street and got a lot of funding, actually 1.7 billion dollars. And yeah, they've launched in 2020, and 6 months after, they are all over the news. They failed, and big time. This is kind of title from Guardian. They built it, but people did not come. And it makes you wonder. This is the nightmare of a software developer, like building and put your love into something, and like suddenly this is not flying. And so they've announced that it's going to be shut down, and actually in 2020, they've officially went dark. So there are a lot of reasons, speculations on what happened. Like the director decided kind of go with the story that like COVID happened. Obviously, it hit things, but critics and those who analyze the market kind of came up with other reasons, and one of the reasons was that they didn't ask the right questions before building the product. So in terms of feasibility, they built the platform. It's like quite well-designed mobile app. People use it and it works well. So will it work? It works. But does it matter? Does it matter for people to kind of, sign up and pay subscription for something that they would, watch on the fly in favor of, looking and scrolling through your TikTok or, Instagram, and so you are competing with these kind of content and these platforms. So desirability was a big question that many critics that say that it was not addressed well. Will it grow? The viability. Will people pay for this in favor of paying for Netflix? Are you competing? You are competing with these. So, with it, worthwhile for people, again, for the problem that they are facing, to pay for it. So this is another thing that they didn't investigate very well, and thinking that because they signed up with the big names, they figured everything out. So another thing that they've kind of undermined is the strategic fit. So these three things should work together, and this big circle, I would name it the strategic fit, how all of this is positioned in the market, and what is the timing of releasing all of this, all of that in also like something. And at the same time, these are things that kind of rotating all of this is the orchestration. Who is orchestrating the show? How can you be sure that all of these areas are well connected in terms of content, pricing, user behavior, platform design, marketing, all had to align well for this to be a success. So, it's quite a complex area, and to figure out how you could teach such a domain, teach students for such a domain is quite complicated. And that's kind of actually also intriguing for us. And that's kind of was one of the motives of designing this module. Is the question for this module became is what does it take to turn a promising idea into a product? How you can survive the market pressure and trust and adapt over time. So the questions are quite now also timely with all of the pressure that we are facing and disruptions happening in the market. Suddenly, like AI is a big thing, and all companies needs to kind of figure out how to incorporate it, and otherwise they will be missing out. So a lot of disruption happening, market shifting. So who gets to decide what and why, how, and for whom are we deciding? All of these questions are quite at the core of what we will discuss today. So, but I thought like maybe it would be useful for those joining us today to maybe give a tiny bit of an overview for those who are not familiar with the terminology. I've mentioned software project, product management, and project management. So what is the difference between these two? So I'm going to quickly run through things for the sake of time to kind of just kind of make sure that everyone on the same page. So when I'm talking about a software here, it's the intangible system or platform, that continuously kind of evolve and mostly driven by user. So it's user driven, continuously evolving. The product is something we offer, the customers to deliver value. This value could be saving you time, when you are lining up your sheets, financial sheets, or bringing you most customers. So what is the value that you are bringing? This is the product. And it needs obviously strategy from what we've discussed, iteration, market fit. Project is the delivery vehicle for us to deliver such a product. So that's project. So it has a start and end, and I deliver the product that you continuously evolve through different projects. So, and the management, I would say, and all of this kind of my kind of analysis after reading literature, this is my interpretation. So different people would interpret things differently. It's kind of, but I would stand by this personally and say, also like the management here is the art of balancing, all of this, balancing vision, execution, teams, stakeholders, and outcomes. Yeah, so a little bit more about this. So software, I've mentioned software, product, project, and management. So what is the life cycle of each one of these? Okay. So for those familiar with software, you may be like familiar with this cycle is kind of, we start with requirements, obviously different methods of how you kind of derive requirements and develop. But overall, like like mostly you will start, you'll have requirements, you design the product, you implement it, you test it, you deploy it, and maintain it. So that's kind of the software development lifecycle. And then here comes the project lifecycle, where you have an idea of a project. It could be a version of a software, that a feature, it's a project. So you initiate that by kind of having a vision of what are the objectives that we're going to hit with this project, and then you plan for it, and scheduling it, and then you execute it, and then monitor and control, ensuring that the execution is not getting out of scope, for example, and then you bring closure. So again, start and end. So how does this fit with the product management? So the product management, and this is again my attempt to make sense out of all of this, is that mostly the product lifecycle goes through certain strategic phases, and they would start with, having a vision of something, of a product that you want to develop. You define the purpose, who are the customers you want to serve, and all of that, desire impact that you're going to have, value you're going to deliver, and then you put a strategy to position yourself in a way that would allow you to deliver this in the right market. So that's where financial models, how you're going to make money, subscription, bundling, yearly, monthly, one-off license, all of this kind of comes here. And then you have the build planning and delivery. This is where you build the thing, and that's why kind of iteration happens, when you have agile teams working on delivering something. Once you have a product, you start kind of, this is kind of all what we discussed is the seed stage, or seed stage of the company. And then when you've released and there's momentum, you grow, you evolve, and your user base becomes bigger and bigger, and you improve your features and so on. And then once you have, a good product that represents the product, you start, reaching the maturity. You start, dominating an area or a market, like if all stars aligned, obviously. But all happy stories come to an end, and most products that we loved, we've seen reaching the sunset stage where you bring closure and finishing all of this. So here comes the kind of my introduction, where project management, to kind of help you kind of understand the context. So project managers work closely with product managers in this stage, the setting the vision, the strategy, the planning and delivery. And obviously they have influence if you have project for all the stage, but mostly speaking project management here. And the software development life cycle, we're talking about applying agile and all of these kind of concepts in software development. It comes to that stage. But again, it's a hive of kind of operations happening together to bring a successful product. So how can we deliver, and how did we position this module? We positioned it in this way. It's 15 credits. It's part of a software engineering master's level, and it when you are like signing up for this master's degree, you have two compulsory modules: object-oriented modeling, design, and programming, and the fundamentals of software engineering. So back to this kind of, so when we are talking about fundamental software engineering, we are talking about the planning, delivery, that kind of bit of iteration. So we needed to make sure that students, and a little bit of project management, because project management dictates what processes that's going to be used in the delivery of the software. So that's kind of mostly what we cover in that module, fundamentals of software engineering, and it's compulsory. So this module that we designed, it was a core requisite with that module. So we want to ensure that students understand the basics, and then we've kind of complemented that with the product understanding of a big picture of things. So it's core requisite with fundamentals, or CS 3099, which is also like a software engineering project, team project module, where students work together and take also like the same dose of content about software engineering from fundamentals of software engineering, almost similar. So why both? Again, they complement each other. In CS 5030, we discuss or cover graduates can say at the end of it, I can build test chip quality code reliably. In this module that we are designing is about like a graduate should say, I can create the right product for the right market and stakeholders. That's kind of, again, to bring to a little bit of clarity. Okay, I'm going to run now quickly through the aims and objectives that we set for this module. And these were the students should be lead this product lifecycle, discuss, craft, align product strategy, choose the right way to deliver the product success, and engage with stakeholders, mitigate risk, ensure quality, lead and collaborate effectively, learn from real practice. We want them to learn and navigate emerging tech. When we discuss about disruption, we want them to deal with certain disruption in the market. And also, obviously, we want them to be able to use the tools available and frameworks like a professional product manager or project manager. And obviously this is not kind of the detail of things or the patch. It's throughout we want them to be able to make the ethical decision in each one of those we discuss, and be able to be accountable towards their decisions. So, but again, you've noticed how it's a little bit messy. There are a lot of loose ends. So the design challenge becomes for us in this module is that the model should not merely become like just a tour of all of the frameworks and tools that you could use throughout. No, it should become a space where students can be able to can kind of repeat the what they have learned, and practice the things that they have learned, deal with uncertainty. That's, again, we discussed, and who knows, who know that COVID is going to hit, but you need to be able to adapt, to deal with these trade-offs, decide how to deal with the feedback coming from stakeholders, all of that kind of things that became a challenge. Like, how can we embed this in the module? So in a nutshell, the product judgment had to become visible. How can I see the students are making the right decision at the right stage? It was quite tricky. So to kind of capture all of this in a question, how do we design assessment around judgment, not just content coverage? So that's kind of, again, the core thing. So to kind of address this, I went on a quest in the literature and tried to kind of cover different areas, and these kind of the lenses that I have used to design the module. I've looked at the software engineering education kind of literature. I looked at graduate readiness and industry alignment. All of that helped me understand part of the picture. Also, product facing competence, how specifically product managers, kind of what they are expected to perform at, or like what are the critical factors in their role that needs to like be met according to industry. All of these papers came out of large scale surveys for product managers and even like institutions or courses, literature review. So it was quite rich, actually, literature available for us to understand this even better. So, and then comes the assessment and feedback. I've looked at the literature on making judgment visible through performance and revision. And then obviously throughout, I was reading a lot of content from software product management body of knowledge in the product management domain, who are like the leaders in terms of like setting the standards for the industry, as well as what could be a spine for understanding the strategy, planning, and orchestration. And I will discuss in a bit what I have identified. So, but looking at all of this, there was like started kind of forming understanding of a gap, and the gap was not about the technical element, implementing software. I've noticed that literature trying to kind of discuss how there is a gap in preparing students to the real kind of industry environment where expectations change quickly, and you might have learned agile, but a specific company use of agile might be a total kind of revamp or like customized version of two processes combined together. So and things might shift suddenly. So this preparation is kind of for quick changing is something that is like missing from teaching software engineering specifically. And when we are talking about also like the graduate readiness, also depends on communication and teamwork, leadership, and business awareness. All of these areas should be met to prepare students. And we have the product facing role when we're talking about specifically. So when I was discussing software engineering, but specifically product management, you have this challenge of how you're going to orchestrate, customers, strategy, and the organizational priority of a certain company together to again navigate all of that. So again, to put things into one kind of sentence, what is missing is this upstream education for students, helping them or like create an environment where they can, decide on what is worth building. Why are we building what we are building? And then, try to understand, obviously, the why is connected to the who are we building for, how to kind of direct this, maybe like sometimes pivot suddenly because of something happened out of the blue. So this is kind of the what was missing. I couldn't find or put my hand on something that could teach that. So again, to kind of recap the focus here, it's about the judgment specifically. Judgment needs more than a final submission. I couldn't rely on, just students submitting a piece of work at the end and me trying to come, because students are very good at hacking around, like, oh, I've implemented this process at the last day rather than like implementing it throughout. So how can we avoid this? How can we have this authentic assessment that meaningfully, intellectually kind of assess the performance, not only the recall of certain things? And we are talking about the authentic kind of tasks of how can we kind of simulate this challenging environment? How can we ensure that students can transfer their knowledge to a real context and from context to another as well? And how can we have this feedback rich environment where students are acting on the feedback actually, and feedback becomes a useful tool, not to kind of just have a explain your grade. It becomes a tool actually in the education. It's all like mostly used like that, but it can easily kind of slip into just a kind of students like don't look at it. If most of the time, I did not sometimes leave the feedback, but how to make it as a tool, because in real life, as I mentioned, stakeholders provide feedback and you need to act on that, specifically in this domain. You cannot just like ship something and like bye bye, you disappear. No, this is something, an iterative process. So, but here, like also like one of the kind of pieces of literature that kind of stuck with me, and this paper that discussed the difference between relevant and word of work. So, okay, I'm gonna explain this. So most of the time, you see. Practitioners or educators trying to kind of push on, we need to simulate real world, real life task, real work practices. But is it doing so? Is it really simulating that task? Is the question that we need to ask, because we sometimes idealize things, and try to kind of replicate that in education, maybe does not really simulate the real thing. And this is where the author says, like, there is, however, I argue, a common conflation of real world with the word of work. Word of work is the context where the work is at. When you are doing your task, you need to take into account a lot of factors. Your boss, sometimes your stakeholders, sometimes. So that's the word of. Are you delivering value to the community? What is the value you are? So all of that comes out of the word of work. So we need to ask so, and then like it follows that, to make it even clearer. So authentic assessment, when you are talking about authenticity, should not only the ask, does this assessment look like something people do at work, rather than asking, why does this task matter? And try to kind of base that, use that as the basis for you to build your educational kind of activity. So what is the social value that such a task bring to the world, and then from there, again, try to teach, rather than like, this is the task, I want to teach it, this is the process we follow. Okay, so also like kind of this connects kind of organically to the idea of also ethics as a design judgment. How can we ensure that ethical issues also considered throughout the design and during the design, rather than like after we launch something, how we kind of embed ethics throughout the choices that we are making in terms of what we are teaching about user data access, risk, responsibility. So throughout the module, each lecture, there will be something about ethics, making it clear to students that this is the wise decision to become ethical, showing examples on companies try to kind of be the smart, I'm not going to mention, but yeah, like become like, smart about it, and like, abuse user data and customers data and suddenly find themselves in a scandal or something. It's logical and ethical to take this into consideration. So this supposed treating ethics as part of the product judgment. Again, that was how I used it, and not a separate add-on. Okay. Okay, so again, that's one of the things that helped me, like that implication, like literature implication on the design of the module. Other stuff is kind of moving beyond delivery, again, competence, delivery competence toward product direction. We discussed this already. Making judgment observable. All of this kind of literature helped me understand how to do so. I'm gonna demonstrate in a bit what were the decisions that I made in terms of making this. Also, using feedback as a material for revision, combining standards with discovery. So that's also something that I wanted to discuss, and that's kind of the next bit. So the last point is combining standard with discovery. You notice how messy is this environment. I cannot just throw it at students and say like, yo, figure it out, you know? So I needed to bring structure, and that's where this kind of, I needed to have a shared professional vocabulary, you know, ensure that students maybe could take it and transfer it to their working environment. Because if you look at the literature around this area, like, different things would be named differently, and different stage would have different kind of scoping. But I needed to look at a standard kind of base, and I was able to find this framework, which was brilliant for my kind of situation. This framework is the coming from the International Software Product Management Association. It was created in 2029, and it combines, the nice thing about this framework is that combines understanding, or is built on principles that's coming from both academia and industry. And the framework defines the product management responsibilities or the domain, and it's not, again, it's not abstract, it is a global industry practice. So looking at the rectangulars here, and maybe like the next slide. Yeah, here you can see how the blue stuff are mostly the where the product managers needs to kind of ensure that they figure it out. For example, you need to have the product strategy, positioning, the product definition, the ecosystem management. How are you going to source the labor for your product? How are you going to deliver your product? Is it going to be subscription? Again, license. What is the difference? How are you going to scale it? How are you going to price it, actually? All of these financial management, legal and PR management, sorry, intellectual property management, and then the performance and risk management, all of these in the product strategy, product planning. How are you going to have customer insights that kind of feeds to this cycle, and how you're going to roadmap things, how you're going to plan your releases, and have a product requirement engineering also active throughout. So these are the core. As you can see, all of these are the core. And then on the left side, you see how the product managers have an involvement and participation with the strategic management. They need to be on the table when the senior managers are, you know, analyzing a market. They need to be on the table when a product, you know, is being analyzed with the strategic management. And then they have an orchestration, a core orchestration. Blue core means orchestration role throughout the process, you know, from development to marketing to sales fulfillment to delivery services and support. So again, quite broad. Um, but I needed to make it sure, for like, to make it clear to my students that this is not checklist. We're not going to treat it as a checklist, uh, but each box is a lens for decision making. And I actually did not follow the exact process from the framework. On They have a lot of trainings, professional trainings. I reshuffled things to adapt to, again, the objective of this module, the question that we are trying to answer, judgment specifically, and in uncertainty. So uh, I'm going to talk about the sequencing in a bit. So again, I've made it very clear that do not use this framework or any framework as a handcuff. This is a big no-no, and is based actually on a very nice book that I highly recommend. It's about product management in practice, by Matt Leamy, and again talks about real life situations from product world. And again, all of this was infused throughout the module. So now I've talked a lot about the module. Before I move on, I'm just gonna check if I have any questions. Okay, sounds good. Okay. So the model overview. Now let's look on what I have delivered and how I structured things. So this is kind of the sequence of weeks throughout the semester, and I'm not gonna go through them one by one, but I'm just gonna define the coloring system to kind of again convey the nature of like how these tools, the product and project management kind of connects. So the first few weeks is mostly in purple. That's or that one in week 11. It's where product management manager mostly kind of would be leading in terms of setting the foundation, setting the vision, discovery, outcome driven road mapping. Um, and then you have the blue, where you would have more emphasis on the delivery and orchestration. And this is where could be, again, you need to work closely with a project manager if you are a product manager. And then you have the green where it's a hybrid. It's kind of a balanced area where, for example, looking at the finance estimation and prioritization, you need to work even like more than just project management. You need to work with the finance team and different functions. Risk management project manager should be there, and so on. Portfolio governance, how different features or different products kind of act together to kind of deliver a certain value. So again, this the sequence, and each week I was zooming in to a certain kind of box or two, or kind of half, again, split things differently. And lectures connected theory with practice and case studies. And there were a lot of kind of tutorials throughout to give students hands-on kind of experience in applying these artifacts, whatever I'm teaching or this domain, into defining a roadmap and risk register, how you're going to build that. So yeah, so this is kind of the journey. It was an iterative journey rather than, again, a one-off framework lecture or series. So we had this amazing kind of framework. It was nice, provide me the structure that I could, use as a spine. But we've seen, again, I've discussed a lot on how this is a messy world, the product management. And I cannot like just, again, have a rigid structure. So I've infused all of my module with lessons learned, principles, practices from industry books. So, and I would highlight some of them. So these are some of these books. I'm gonna actually talk about the reading list in a bit. But Lean Startup is kind of one of the big names in terms of startups world, entrepreneurship. I've embedded some of these principles. The Mom Test is a book that talks about how you can make questions with your customers that even your mom cannot lie to you about it, about like whether your product is good or not. So it helps you define the right questions. And continuous discovery, is a very important now concept in the industry on how, you hear maybe about continuous delivery of a software, but the same thing in parallel should be happening with the customer. You need to keep discovering the problem. You cannot just like, I understand your problem. I'm going to build you this software. If you come after a month, things could have shifted into a different direction. Are you continuously doing this? And this is Teresa Torres does a brilliant job in providing you with the techniques and tools that allows this to happen. And then product practice literature. Also, they were like Kagan, Lee May, inspired a very big book, important book actually in the area. Talks about the iterative importance of empowering teams and stakeholder judgment. So, yeah, a lot of literature from the domain, and I guess this is, yeah. So this is the timetable. I'm just gonna skip this through this just for the sake of time because I already covered this. So this is the reading material. Again, this is the handbook from the ISPMA, Software Product Management Handbook, and covers all of that framework in detail. Inspired book, again, I've mentioned this. Ian Somerville, software engineering. Ian Somerville was one of the lecturers here. I'm so proud to be in the same institution, actually. He's a big name, again, in software engineering literature. And so I've also like provided a lot of, so these are the core These books are the core. I've used a lot of these, and then I've used additional, again, reading and recommended reading, a lot of recommended reading, and I've actually encouraged students to also consider incorporating podcasts into their daily kind of, when they are at the gym, or doing their laundry, or shows. I've highly encouraged them to kind of listen to well-known podcasts, because it gives you like real life insights into that domain. So yes, so the philosophy now. So this is the reading. We discussed the structure. What was the philosophy that underpins my approach of designing these lectures and tutorials and assessments? I follow this like most of the time. This is one of the things that I'm very grateful that I've attended a training of trainers with the Wikimedia Foundation, and I was introduced to this technique. And it talks about how you should take your audience in a journey of defining the why. You start with the why you should listen to me, why this worth your time, this where you grab your attention. And and this kind of, the framework talks on how different people would perceive importance differently. Some people, like, they need to understand why they should be there. Some people, like, are there for the what. So what are you teaching me? What is the process? So for example, if I'm talking about a framework, why should you listen to me? It's important. It's industry. You set the why. It helps you save time, structure. And then the what. And then I teach you the principles. I teach you the practice, the process, how it's structured. And then you need to put that into practice. Some people learn by doing, some people learn by hearing, some people learn by, a combination of both. So this is where the how, I try to get students to practice this. And I shouldn't stop there, because the format emphasizes the if. How can we teach them to adapt this, how, the learning that they have got, into different contexts, the context of their own life, how to kind of refine something actually to fit into a different context. So this is kind of was at the core of the philosophy: learn by doing, reflect by thinking. And so yes, so in the CS five, like the module, we've emphasized. This is actually a slide for the students from the lecture. We said, like, we focus on the applied learning, creativity over conformity, and I've made it clear. Sometimes if I've seen like an innovative idea that does not necessarily follow what we have discussed, I will reward that, and it was made very clear that critical discussion over passive absorption of knowledge. And yeah, so product thinking and judgment, not feature shipping. So not a passive lecture. I've infused the lectures actually with a lot of exercises. And it was like, interactive boards. We used like Microsoft Form, where students can say answers, and it was really fun to also like engage with them with these activities throughout. So yes, so the design of the module again had, to recap, it had the standard based spine, that kind of an added layer of discovery layer from literature in the industry, or like industry books and practices. And um, there was like a shared case that I've introduced at the start of the module. I've shared with them a case. I'm going to talk about it in the next slide, to be used as a context for my teaching, so that I don't have to switch context a lot. And an assessment loop, where students kind of, again, iteratively work on their assessment. I'm going to talk about these now, points. So the case study, there were like actually two cases throughout the module. The teaching case, where I had a fictional gov tech SaaS startup. It was built and run by an entrepreneur. Her name is Mirna Idris. She is from Morocco. She is helping mid-size companies with their immigration compliance, setting up the visa, all of this. She has a very awesome software that leaves alleviate the burden on certain small companies that cannot deal with all of these compliance issues in terms of visa and immigration and so on. So again, shared product award with them, repeated decisions. It helped with lower context switching. throughout. And then for the assessment, I ask students to work on an event management or booking product. So, and the purpose was to uh, get them to transfer what they are learning into a different context rather than, like, again, using the same case to do the assessment. And yeah, so the reason also behind product, I had to have an area that where students can flex their muscles, product management muscles, and booking software. You have different stakeholders. You have the buyer, the seller, and you need to cater for both. But I didn't specify what kind of product management they're gonna have. So they have the flexibility of choosing what is their focus. So again, two cases and then tutorials. There were like a bunch of tutorials throughout, and they were like strategy laboratories. And this is from the session where we use Miro boards. You see like how divided students to groups, and each group would work on their own space. And students worked in group on different things. For example, tutorial one, we discussed the vision discovery, positioning. I asked them to apply the learnings from the lectures to help Mirna, the again the fictional SaaS company that we've introduced to them at the beginning. The second tutorial discussed about gave them the space actually to revisit a concept that they find hard and reflect on it and try to kind of learn it and teach it to their colleagues in the room. So each student would have 2 minutes, each group would have 2 minutes to kind of report back in each of these sessions. And the last one was scheduling a challenge. If those interested in project management, I gave them a lot of tasks. They need to schedule it, a lot of dependencies and so on. And I also gave them the option to think about AI. What is useful for product managers when it comes to AI, what could be a waste of time and would have ethical kind of implications. So, or they could choose to kind of use tutorial two, where they again revisit specific concepts. They had the freedom, these groups, to choose what they want to work on in tutorial three. So these are tutorial sessions. The group the group-based coursework. So students divided into groups of 5, and we had two practicals. Practical one had 24% of the marks, and then the first one was about an initial product strategy. You have this event management. Choose an area and give me a strategy, the vision, who are you serving, how you position yourself, and then they had their feedback, on their P1. So we didn't stop there, and again, that applies the things, the learning from literature is that I used the feedback as a tool for P2. I asked them actually to revisit each comment that I had and apply, maybe rejected, but you need to tell me why you rejected my comment. So you need to defend your position, or adapt based on what I have taught you, or like I've provided you feedback with. So it was an iteration. They had to have an iteration section where they need to actually annotate the P1 what they have changed and talk about their change in the P2, where they complement their strategy with the financial logic and all of the other bits. So feedback became material for judgment, not only mark justification. Um, Moving on, the beyond the report. So what is beyond the report? Each practical had also um, students groups submitted their group work and a short video. It's a pitch, 5-minute pitch about their product. P1 had a pitch recorded, but P2, they came to a Dragon's Den like, environment. I had a panel from industry and the actually director of entrepreneurship center setting, and actually give them like marks based on a certain criteria in the marking scheme. And they had to pitch 5 minutes, and they were like told that you consider they know nothing about your product. And it was very interesting how students kind of adapted. So, and they had like individual reflections pieces to give them a space to talk about their own. Also they journal, they were very encouraged to journal their own learning throughout. And then Finally, the exam came to give them a space for an individual judgment. You know, they were given a lot of scenarios, three scenarios, and a lot of uncertainty. You are, for example, in the middle of a situation where you need to pitch to your team why you should not do what you are doing and do something different. You know, what is this different thing, and how are you going to pitch it? All kind of real kind of scenarios, unfamiliar scenarios for students to kind of apply their learning. So that's kind of mostly the kind of structure. So what changed? That kind of again reflect on what I have discussed already. So from learning framework, we became kind of using framework critically from one submission to feedback-driven revision, from isolated topics to an accumulating product argument, and then from group output to reflection, presentation, and individual application, and from the question of what should we include in this software to what can we justify in the software. So this is again, okay, so the outcome. I had 42 students, and I've had a pre-module survey and a post-module survey. 33 students did the pre-survey, and then the post obviously less. 13 students, and 11 gave me the consent to analyze their and present their data. And there were like also like responses from a university level survey that gave a lot of context for me on things that I could improve and areas of strength. But again, to capture like one core area is the how confident students are in certain areas. For example, defining a product vision. So this is pre the course and this is after the course. So this is their own interpretation of their self-confidence. And we can see like the growth, and I'm really happy with it. And in areas, for example, risk management. So, but we need to be careful in interpreting these data here. It's this evidence is formative, not experimental. I did not tie, for example, each student pre and after. Yeah, so a little bit of qualitative stuff. So this is quantitative first. So this is also a scale of the student. I was really happy with this one. Has this module influenced your career interest or direction? And 36 out of the 11 students submitted said yes, significantly actually. And you see like how the others felt. And feedback, it was, I was really glad to read that, someone saying like the most thought through and detailed feedback they ever received. And that was good because again, it was a tool for them. So I didn't treat it again as just to kind of justify the mark. So again, professional relevance. I get a lot of students now also stopping me, emailing me about like, how I'm now entering fintech. Because of this module, I've did this or that because of this module. I'm really, overwhelmed with the feedback. Obviously, there were areas of that we could improve, but I've discussed already what worked well, but what needs refinement is the obviously group dynamics. I need to be able to probe even further into how individuals are contributing to this group work to kind of have a little bit more fair distribution of grades. It is already kind of the individual piece gives them the space to flag any issue and discuss things, but I think I should encourage this more. Signposting how we can connect the lectures together is something that I want to improve and navigate this kind of breadth and wealth of frameworks. The Again, like I need to kind of mention this, the evidence boundary is that current evidence becomes concerns because it's their own perception of things, not them applying something and me, evaluating it. So this is something that I would love to work on in the future and analyze, how this presentation reflection also that I have written, I would analyze it and maybe dig out certain learnings in a rigorous way. But yeah, so what can we and cannot claim? I've already covered this. The claim the design was meaningful to students. Also we can claim students report the greater confidence, claim that the assessment made revision and defense visible, and but I cannot claim again the causal learning gain, and I cannot also see how their behavior would change once they go to industry, how they are practicing what they have learned or not. Again, but yeah, so this is what I would love to see more of, people like teaching product judgment when it comes to this area. So software education already teaches many ways to build good software and delivery, as I discussed early on. But the harder challenge is to teach students how to decide what is worth building. It's very important, and it's one of the most costly problems that you could face in this industry. And the internet is filled with, failures just because those who've built the thing were too arrogant, maybe, or naive to ask this: who are we serving? Are they happy with this or not? For example, look up the web van. It's like during the web, like com bubble, they had something like to deliver groceries, and they've raised a huge amount of money, and but people did not kind of use their service. Why? Because they did not, align things with people. And to do so, you need to prepare those who are in charge with good judgment and good kind of tools to enable them to probe this with the customers on a continuous basis. So the harder challenge is, again, to teach students to decide what is worth building. Product judgment becomes teachable when it becomes visible. I cannot teach it if I cannot see it, students with students assignments. So this is quite important. The student experience must include uncertainty, must include the feedback, again, that's used as a tool, and revision on rather than like a final one-off submission. And they need to defend their position all the time, and that's kind of part of the learning. So that's the educational space that this module is trying to set out, and hopefully grow from there to kind of over more kind of modules, hopefully, I don't know, or official training here at the school. But I'm really excited to take this. This is the first year, first delivery, and obviously there's a lot to kind of improve, and I would love a little bit feedback, obviously. So this is the reference list of things that I have used and I discussed in this presentation. And this is my final slide, where I want to thank and acknowledge the effort that my students have put to this, and their feedback, that helped me actually like build this presentation. And also I want to acknowledge the work of my colleagues here at the School of Computer Science, and because they like the initial idea of the module, I didn't come up with it. Actually, it was part of a restructuring of the software engineering degree, and I was told that like it might suit your portfolio of work. And but I'm really grateful for the work that they have done in consultation with the industry and partners and our alumni to kind of see what could be what modules do we need. And that was like an idea emerged from their effort. My colleague Darini and Graham, they've done, and many others, done a great job. And obviously, I want to thank the industry partners and collaborators, the Entrepreneurship Center, again, who served as a part of the panel for discussion. And I want to thank you, everyone, for staying so far and joining us today, and thank the organizer Mansu for asking me to deliver this talk. And with this, I'm going to conclude my session. So, because this is recorded, I'm going to leave you actually with these questions to kind of think about if you are trying to take such an approach in delivering or designing something similar. It's about like how you're going to ask yourself, where does product direction appear in the curriculum? How do you assess judgment, not only output? How feedback can be, again, a tool, use the tool. What kind of uncertainty should students experience safely? And what is our role in academia? What should we remain distinctively academic about product education? What is our role in terms of applying ethics in the design and embedding something in our students that they would take with them to the industry, hopefully influencing a little bit of change there. So yeah, that's me. And